Okay, thank you so much, Strong. Um, yeah, so as I was sharing, for today's session, it will just be focusing on or sharing on the different ways that one can contribute to OSM other than mapping. So, and as I was sharing, is that for the past few weeks, our sessions have been focused on how you can contribute to OSM through mapping. So, how you can contribute by adding buildings, roads, or any other features. We have learned how to use tools like the ID editor, tools like the JOSM editor, and many more. But at times you might find someone else, maybe you are looking to contribute in different ways, or uh, or at times for people get bored with mapping, or at times you map for a long period of time, then you feel like you need a break, but you still want to contribute to the OpenStreetMap project. So the whole essence is to share the different ways that you can contribute. So as we had shared when we were starting, is that OSM mainly works by uh, mapping that's being conducted by different communities, and and for example, what we've been doing, like mapping the South Sea project, we're adding buildings and modifying also buildings that had already been added on OSM a while ago, but you notice that those are just buildings and roads, and yes, they can be useful in different ways. For example, when someone just wants to understand the urban structure of an area, or estimate things like the population of an area by looking at how many buildings are in an area. So that data it's still useful, but I believe that for send data to be even more useful to different areas, there's a need for us to enrich that data by adding more information. So by adding more attributes. So if it's a road, what type of road it is, um, sort of things like the structures, if it has lanes, how many lanes are there, route information. So that's basically what I mean. So, and for that to happen, we then need to move from a virtual setting to to a field setting. So it means that we have to walk around these areas and actually have a look at these areas and add this information if needed. So one of the first ways that one can, other than what we've been doing so far, one of the things that people can do or a person can do to improve their contribution to SM is by working on enriching existing data on SM. So if an area has been fully mapped, or even if an area has been partly mapped, maybe you're familiar with the area, if it's your school, if it's your home, then you can always add more information. So if it's the names of a building, the type of a building, is it a residential apartment? Is it a business building? Such kind of information. That is also another way that one can contribute, and those are contributions that can be seen as well. And even if maybe you want to like have sort of a hybrid contribution. Last year we covered a session on mobile applications that you can use to contribute to OSM. So things like Mapillary that you can use to capture street level imagery, then go back home or wherever you're mapping from, and from street level imagery, then getting all this information. So that is also possible. So just sharing that some of the tools that are available to use if you're looking to enrich data that's on OpenStreetMap. So there's Maps.me, which is like an app like the Google Maps mobile app that we have on our phones. Then there's Mapillary that we had covered, which we use to capture street level imagery. And then there's OpenMapKit. But there's so many, there are many more apps that you can use to enrich. You can even do it directly on OpenStreetMap if you're very familiar with an area. Then the second thing that I wanted to share was on data validation. This is also something that we covered in one of our sessions last year. like yes, in as much as it heavily involves mapping virtually, there's still a huge need for data validators on SM. That like if you compare people who are just contributing to SM and people are validating, the numbers are a bit low. So even if you look at the different tasking managers, like the hot tasking manager, you notice that there are a lot of projects that are mapped, but are not validated or not fully validated. So, in case you are at a level where you fully understood the mapping process, you're an advanced mapper, you can, just the same way that we learn how to map, you can also learn how to validate. And you'll actually notice that there's a need for those skills. And these are actually some of the tools that we had covered last year um, by the session that was led by Sharon on some quality assurance tools that people usually use to for data validation processes. So yeah, so in case you have mapped for a while, you can always get into data validation um, as well. Then the third way is through developing software. So for this training program, we actually like the people who got into the program. It was a diverse group. There are people who are into GIS. They also had a few developers as well. So in case you are a software developer or you're getting into software development, uh, you can actually contribute to SM via that route, because OSM is not just an open database, it's also fully open source. So all the tools that we use are open source. The ID editor, JOSM, Potlat, all of them are open source. The OSM website that we usually access, the OpenStreetMap.org, is also open source. So if you look at I had opened the wiki page, this wiki page, so it's wiki.openstreetmap.org /wiki/develop. You'll find all the details about how the OpenStreetMap platform, I don't know who's not on mute, how the OpenStreetMap platform is built. So and that means like you can have a look at the different tools and see if your skill set matches and if you can learn how to contribute. So for example, like the OSM website uses Rails. Obviously JOSM uses Java, it's Java based. There are also some tools that are require JavaScript, like leaflets, that is used obviously on the OSM website. So you can always have, if you're a web developer or you're getting into software development, you can have a look and see how you can contribute. So you can have a look at this page, then you can obviously get access to the GitHub pages for each project, and then yeah, see if you'll obviously see issues that are open, um, and you can see how you can contribute as well. And also another thing that you can do in terms of development is you can report an issue. So if you are using any of the editors and you notice there's something that can be improved or something that's broken, you can always report an issue on GitHub for for that specific project, and then that will also be a way of contributing, even in as much as maybe someone else will fix that issue. The fact that you reported the issue means that the project will be improved in a way. And also, as I've added below, um, there's also, it's not just coding that's required, but you can also help with documentation. So if you're also familiar with technical writing and documentation for open source projects, then that's also a way that you can contribute. Yeah. So yeah, in case you, I think it's also just important to share this so that in case you are a software developer and you really want to contribute to OSM, like you do not have to, and you prefer contributing via coding as opposed to mapping, you can do it this way as opposed to sort of maybe I'd say struggle if I don't like mapping, so by struggling to map or such things. And then in relation to this, because of um, all these tools being open source, it then opens up several opportunities that are usually open in the open source world. So things like Google Summer of Code that happens every year, and then there's also Outreachy. Um, these are two programs that are usually focused on open source development for students and for young professionals, where it's like a fellowship or an internship where you're paid to contribute to open source projects. So that also opens up those two opportunities for people who might be interested in contributing to OSM. A good example is usually through, because we use tools built by Hot OSM. So like the tasking managers, last year they had I think last year and the year before that, there was a huge group of people who contribute throughout Chichi, even from Africa. So yeah, because of this, you can also look at that and see how you can take advantage of such opportunities that happen every year. Then yeah, the other way is OSM communities. So OSM communities are basically groups of individuals that contribute to OSM in different ways. And personally, I'm a fan of communities in general, tech communities. Uh, I think it's usually a very good platform for people who have like sort of like-minded passions or beliefs to meet and learn from each other and share. So there's so many types of communities. Uh, we have, I'll start by sharing, we have like national OSM communities. So for example, like uh, myself and some other volunteers, we volunteer every week to sort of run the Kenyan OSM community. So we organize for things like mapathons, events. Before COVID, we could have a number of mapathons regularly or a number of events. Um, there's also regional communities, like there's an OSM Africa community that has people like across 50 countries. So and with things like OSM Africa, then also a good chance just to um, learn from each other and what people are doing with OSM in across different countries. And then another thing that OSM Africa does is that we organize the annual uh, I think yeah, now we can call it the annual State of the Map Africa conference. The first one happened in 20, I don't want to be wrong, 2017, if I'm not wrong, 2017 in Uganda. And then yeah, in 2018, there was no State of the Map Africa conference, but in 2019 there was one in Ivory Coast, and then this year there's actually one in Nairobi. So yeah, that conference is also usually organized by the OSM Africa community, and these are just people who are volunteering and just form committees within the community and put in time every week to organize the conference and other activities. Then there's also like the global OSM community. So when you're thinking about the global OSM community, you start thinking now about things like the OpenStreetMap Foundation and such things. But other than that, there are also so many other communities. If you're thinking about OSM communities in general, so if you're thinking at the university level, there are youth mappers chapters for each university, and these are just groups of students who are interested about in open mapping in general and contributing to OSM. There are also groups that are focused on a certain initiative. So, for example, there are groups that are focused on improving the diversity in OSM communities. So, in terms of gender diversity, so there are groups like GeoChicas. GeoChicas is also mainly focused on on OSM, or it started with OSM at its core. Uh, yes, in as much as there are things like women in geospatial, um, and all these other groups, there are groups that are focused on women and OSM. So I think one of the global ones that I know is GeoChicas, but there are also like regional ones. Like there's one in Philippines that's also coming up. It's called GeoLadies PH. So yeah, but communities are basically just a group of people that you can resonate with or identify with, and that you can join. You can join them to either support their initiatives or even further contribute to OpenStreetMap. So yeah, so another by joining different OSM communities, you can just join to participate in the activities of those communities because maybe they serve you as well, and also you do not want to continue contributing to OSM in isolation. So in case maybe, so say for example, if you're Kenyan and since for the OSM Kenya community, the activities are mainly based in Nairobi, uh, and yes, you love mapping. Maybe you do it by yourself, but maybe from time to time you might want to meet other people and yeah, just learn from each other. So by supporting the activities of a community, you're contributing in a way. But also for almost all of these communities, you can always volunteer with them. So say, for example, for a community to plan a meetup or a mapathon, there are so many logistical activities that happen on the back. So, for example, you need to look for a venue, you need to sort out internet, you need to sort out if you provide food or snacks or such things. And for those things to happen, you usually need people to help out in a way. If it's looking for a venue, if it's also talking to people. So, for example, for us, most of our mapathons usually work with an organization who would provide for us a venue and the internet, or at times they would provide food even food as well for that event. So, you usually need to go talk to them, share about the event. Sort of, it's basically finding a deal, pitching a deal, and making sure the other party accepts. So even if I give an example, for the past 2 years we had open data days. That's usually in March. For that to happen, two things need to happen. You need to apply for a mini grant. That's usually about 30,000 per per event. So obviously it's like any grant application. You have to prepare. You need to create content and write. Basically, write a convincing application for you to receive the amount. And then once, if you're lucky and you receive the grant, then at least you have some funding to for that event. And honestly, if you think about it, that 30,000 is not a lot of money, but it can support in some ways. So for us, what we usually try to do is to get a free venue, so that when you get the 30K, that can go to food. Because if you're having a an event for an entire day, you might want to provide snacks in the morning, then you might need to provide also like a snack at lunchtime. So that the money we can use it for food and the internet. So for that to happen, we could reach out to your N and then talk to the department, and then hopefully for both times we got a free venue and we got internet, or at times we provided our own internet. Other organizations that we have been able to also reach out to are people like RCMRD, people like Upande, who like gave us a venue, food, and even Ushahidi. So yeah, that's how like communities run. Even for a project to run, there are so many things that need to happen. Someone needs to create a project. Some people need to create training materials. Some people need to present and train people. So those are. I've never seen a community that does not need more people to support projects or activities in that way. And even as I was sharing for things like OSM Africa, when organizing the State of the Map Africa, there's so many committees. So, say for example, like for the Nairobi one this year, there's a local organizing committee. Obviously, for people who are within Kenya and Nairobi, who would then help to finalize on everything that uh, that are associated with the venue. So you're thinking about everything to do with the venue, accommodation, everything to do with food, everything to do with local transport, and providing local information that will be needed by people be traveling in. Then there are also things like the programs committee, who are in charge of the conference schedule, um, things like sponsorship and budgeting. So people will talk to who will talk to different organizations to be able, so that we can get funding for the conference. So there's so many ways. There's even communications, and honestly, even as a participant in this community, I can tell you that all these committees might always need more people. And you'll even notice that the people who are volunteering in 2 or 3 committees are just because you can say that uh, the number of people volunteering in that aspect are not as many as the community might have needed. Yeah, so you can always have a look at the available OSM communities and reach out to join those OSM communities. And also another thing is if you are in an area and there's no SM community, you can always create one. Yeah. Then the other thing is working groups. So when I was sharing about communities, I had shared something about the global SM community. So we have OpenStreetMap as a platform in itself, and then we have the OpenStreetMap Foundation that I'd say governs all the activities of OSM. So there's usually a board that for this foundation that is voted in every year, and then this board usually decides on all any issues that are affecting the OSM and the OSM community in general. But for everything to run smoothly, there are several working groups that exist for the OSM. And then there's the OSMF only has one employee who's like a secretary for the board meetings and then handles a number of things that cannot be handled by the working groups. For the working groups that are available, so the first thing is for you to join the OSMF. There's usually sign up, and then there's usually a fee to be paid. I think it's around, last time I checked, it was 15 euros. But since 2018, there's been a program for those who are not able to pay the 15 euros. So you can sort of like apply and then join. And there are 2 methods for that. So if you contributed consistently, and then there's also other ways of contribution. So all these other things that I've been mentioning. So in terms of community, like working with community, like all these other ways that you are contributing to OSM other than mapping, then you can always apply for that. So it usually runs every year at around September. Yeah. So personally, I've been part of the OSMF for the past 2 years, but I've never paid. So yeah, in case you ever want to join, you can you can always apply for that and then join, and then you can join a working group. So these are the working groups that exist. So there's a communications working group, obviously, that focuses on communications in terms of on social media for OSM, and also things like mailing lists and such things. Then there's the data working group that focuses on everything to do with OSM data and its quality. So say, for example, if you make if you make a huge error on OSM, say if you delete a number of things, they're able to monitor that. Like, they've developed their own tools from their end, so they're able to monitor changes that are coming into into OSM as a platform, and say if a huge deletion is made, they're able to reverse it, and then they're also able to reach out to that person and see what was happening. They're also able to block your account. And also, another thing is also if, say, if I'm mapping in Nairobi and I notice there's some huge changes that are being made, um, I'm able to report a person to an account, the data working group, in case maybe I reach out to this person and no change is being done. I'm also able to report to the data working group, and they can look into it, and then they can block this account and sort of revert all the changes that have been made by this account. Then there's the engineering working group, obviously focusing on all these development tools, all these tools that we've been talking about that are open source. Then licensing, obviously, as you might know, OSM is free and open, but it's under Creative Commons license. And what that means is also that for in as much as anyone can use it for any use, the direct use of OSM as a platform means that you might need to attribute. So that's why if you look at maps like on Mapbox or maps by when you look at Esri maps on their online platforms, at the bottom you usually see attribution that has been made to OpenStreetMap contributors. So as part of the licensing working group, it's to monitor also how people are using OSM directly, and if proper licensing has been made, or proper attribution has been made for the platform. So also another a good example under this would be when Facebook started contributing to OSM and using OSM, there are a lot of, of issues in terms of licensing and attribution. So these are issues that are usually brought up to the licensing working group, and then they can also monitor and discuss and all this and all that. Then there's the membership working group that obviously monitors people joining in the OSMF. Then operations, then as the set of the map organizing committee, that global conference that happens every year. Um, but for the past few years, it's been an in-person conference that happens all around the world. And for the organizing committee, it's also been broken down into smaller subcommittees. So there's scholarships, there's programs, there's sponsorship, and all that. Then there's the local chapters and communities working group. So as I was sharing, there are so many OSM communities, and this is actually a process for a community to become an official local chapter. So there's a working group that monitors applications that are coming in and presents those applications to the entire OSMF, and then works with the board to make a community to be an official OSMF local chapter. Then lastly, on the OSMF, there are also committees that are created to focus on I'd say issues that might not, like issues that say might be fixed. Let me say that here, like or issues that come up that might not need a long-term working group. So things like the Diversity and Inclusion Special Committee, which was created earlier last year, because of the diversity issues within OSMF. If you might not know, for the very many past years, there's been the OSMF board has been all white, all male. I think it was for a short period where there was one female and such things. There's never been an African person on the board. So those are things that people brought up because if you look at the people contributing to OSM and you look at the board that's serving the OSM, it's not the same. Like the community is more diverse as the board. So a committee was created to sort of brainstorm on how that can be improved and sort of improve on the diversity of the board in particular, because if the board if the board is not diverse, it means that issues of a certain community are not heard. So say for example, if there's no African in the board, if there are specific issues that the African or OSM community experiences, those issues will never be brought up or discussed. Then there's the Force Policy Committee that focuses on the open source nature of OSM, and then the Microgrants Committee, that was started last year as well, because for the first time, the OSMF awarded a number of communities grants to work on one-off projects. So actually, one of the projects that received funding was by Map Kibera, who presented on Tuesday. Yeah, there's a project that they did last year, and they got funding from the OSMF. Yeah. Then the second last way, yeah, this is the second last way. Second last way is through advocacy. So in as much as we are contributing to OSM, and we can always talk to people about contributing to OSM, the best way that one can share as OSM as well is through advocating for its use. And it's easy to tell someone, or it makes sense to tell someone to use OSM by sharing yourself how you're using OSM. So because OSM is web-based, the first way that one can use OSM directly is by building applications using OSM data. So say for example, even as simple as websites like company websites. You notice, see people usually at that section where people share where the companies are located, and there's usually a map there. There's usually a Google Maps. Obviously, for most people, it's usually Google Maps, but actually the amount of money, it's actually like it's expensive for you to add that to add a Google Maps layer on your website, and that amount has increased over the years. Especially last year, there was a huge spike on that amount. So actually, if you look at a lot of websites, you'll notice that yes, the map is there, but it's like I've ever seen these proprietary images that I usually have lines across them, and so that you cannot use them directly. So I noticed the same thing with most maps on websites, and then I think it's written they've written across it for development purposes only. So in case of having such issues, because if someone maybe wants to see where your building is, as simple as that, you can use OSM directly. So if you're familiar with WebGIS, if you use things that like leaflets or open layers, you can directly add OSM to your website and such things. Even if you are developing your own web applications, maybe that are maybe not just websites, but web applications that like have more analytical functions, you can always also serve OSM directly from the OSM website. And then you can also, there are also like other tools that I will cover in the last weeks of this training program, things like Mapbox that allow they're like an intermediate between OSM and your application. So there are also such platforms that can also allow you to work with OSM data as well. So mobile applications as well, story maps. For mobile applications, a good example is Snapchat. If you use Snapchat and you've never noticed, Snapchat uses OSM, but through Mapbox. So you can also, if you're thinking of developing a mobile app that is location centric, you can always think about using OSM. Then the other way is using OSM as a data source for your projects. So if you're doing any project that requires data, you can always use OSM as a source, and then obviously attributing it as a data source as well. And then you can also carry out research on OSM. If you attend any sort of the MAP conference, even the virtual ones, even if you look at the recordings for last year, you'll notice that there's usually a track called the academic track, and that track is usually only focused on people are carrying research about OSM. So, in terms of data quality and such things, and also how maybe OSM has been used in some areas. So, like how it works, any benefits, any challenges, how to deal with those challenges. So, you can, if maybe you are doing your masters or you are thinking about doing your masters, you can actually like your research for your thesis can be focused on OSM as a platform, and uh, maybe in its relation to a specific area and all that. So yeah, for this I can encourage you to go and look at the academic track for the past conferences, the state of the map conferences. Then you can see how people are doing that. Um, yeah, and then I guess also just sharing how different organizations are using OSM. So just the same way Zach shared with us how they're using OSM, how Elijah shared with us how different Red Cross societies are using OSM. That is also a way of advocating. Yeah, then lastly is by writing and through social media. So by writing, that you can always share your experience uh, about mapping on OSM. So I think during the first session when you are looking at the OSM platform and um, exploring, I think I showed yeah about I explained about the OSM diary where you can basically write on anything that you think about OSM. So if it can be anything that you had worked on, it can be your experience um, at a conference or anything of the sort. So yeah, you can always share your experience. At times, it can bring up a whole new conversation that and bring up issues that can be worked on. Or at times, someone um, who does not know about OSM might need to read about it and learn about OSM and maybe get interested in starting. Then yeah, if you're active on social media professionally, you can always as well follow accounts that are focused on OSM and such things, and then yeah, you can always tweet about it, post, whatever, like whatever you might want to post about OSM, so long as it's sharing and all that. And then lastly, there is a platform called Weekly OSM, and for this platform, from the name Weekly OSM, it's a weekly newsletter. So every week in this newsletter, it's shared about everything that has happened on OSM during that week. So if it's a community that worked on a project, so they're announcing sort of uh, how that project was, the results of that project, or if it's an issue that's ongoing in the global SM community. So anything maybe that's being voted on, if maybe the board was being voted in, you notice that it's basically just a weekly newspaper or a newsletter that shares everything that's happening in the OSM world every week. If there are any announcements and such things. Yeah, so I think that covers everything. Yeah, I tried to look at yeah, the different ways that one can contribute to OSM. If you're so tired, I don't say tired, but personally I've met people who got tired of mapping at some point. So I think it's very important to just know uh, that there are different ways that you can contribute, and it's not a must uh, that you contribute by mapping. If that is something that you noticed you no longer like, uh, yeah. So other than I think that's it. Unless there are any questions. Oh yeah, the last thing that I forgot to share, in case also you might want to have a look at what the working groups usually work on maybe before you join the OSMF. Uh, there are mailing lists for like all this, um, the mailing lists for all these working groups, so you can always see what's happening. At times you'll notice that even there's a call for volunteers and such things. For example, I think 2 weeks ago, the set of the map working group announced that they were looking for more people, so you can always join the mailing list. I'll try and find the link that like has all the mailing lists, and then you can join, and then you can sort of subscribe so that you maybe get a weekly digest of everything that's happening. And then I'll also find the Telegram group links for OSM communities. There's one for OSM Africa. There's one for the Global OpenStreetMap community. Then there's one for GeoChipas. Um, yeah, I'll try and compile all those links and share them with everyone. So yeah, but basically that was it for today. I don't know if anyone has a question or yeah, you can go ahead and ask. Yeah, but that will be it for Leo. Any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, I think that will be it. Yeah, but if anything comes up, maybe if you try joining a community and you're having any issues, you can always reach out, and then and be able to help you in whichever way. So yeah, if that's it, then I'll go ahead and wish everyone a good night. I'll share the slides and let me try and get the links right now, if I forget, and then I'll share them. Okay, sawa sawa. Haya, kwaherini, kwaherini.